Everything you think is your choice might not be as true as you believe it is right now. What if the real problem isn't what you're doing wrong, but how you were conditioned to think from the beginning? Because right now, without even realizing it, you're thinking inside a system you never consciously agreed to follow. And that system quietly controls what you believe, what you chase, and what you assume is even possible for you. Here's the dangerous part. Most people never question it, and that's exactly why they never break out of it. Think about it. Every action you take started as a thought long before it ever became something real in your life. Every belief, every decision, every desire you have, it all comes from patterns already built deep inside your mind. And this is where it becomes powerful. If thoughts are the base, then your entire life is built on them. Just like a skyscraper depends on its foundation, your reality depends completely on the way you think every single day. But nobody ever showed you how to build that foundation properly, and that's where everything slowly begins to break apart. Quick pause. I'm Marcus, and I break down ideas like this so you can see what most people never even notice. If this is already shifting how you think, subscribe, because what we're about to uncover goes much deeper than this. Here's what most people never realize. You were never actually taught how to think in the first place. You were only taught what to think, and that difference silently shapes almost every decision you're making today. From childhood, you were given answers long before you ever learned how to ask meaningful or deeper questions yourself. Study hard, get good grades, get a stable job. You were handed a script and told this is what success looks like. But pause for a moment. Did you ever stop to question who actually wrote that script you're still following today? Because when you follow what to think, you stop exploring anything beyond what you were originally told was true. You stop questioning, you stop observing deeply, and you slowly begin accepting everything around you as fixed reality. And this is where it becomes dangerous. Opinions slowly start to feel like undeniable and unquestionable facts. You see something repeated by thousands of people, and your brain automatically labels it as truth without ever questioning it. But just because something is widely accepted doesn't mean it's actually correct or even worth believing at all. Now think about this. What if most of your facts are just inherited opinions repeated until they started feeling real? Suddenly, the way you see the world begins to feel a lot less certain and a lot more questionable, doesn't it? And that uncertainty feels uncomfortable. So most people avoid it completely and stay inside familiar beliefs their whole lives. But this is where everything begins to change. Learning how to think breaks that comfort completely apart. It forces you to question, to observe deeply, and to step outside what everyone else blindly accepts as normal behavior. And once you do that, you begin seeing opportunities exactly where others only see limitations, risks, and obstacles. Let me show you what this actually looks like with a real story that most people completely overlook or ignore. During World War II, global trade collapsed, and ships suddenly became almost useless across nearly the entire world. Shipping companies were losing money fast, and the entire industry started looking like it was slowly dying out completely. Everyone agreed on one thing: ships had absolutely no future left anymore in that kind of uncertain environment. That belief spread so widely that it stopped being questioned and started being treated like an obvious and accepted fact. People stopped thinking independently and simply accepted what everyone else believed must be true at that moment in time. But one man refused to follow that pattern, and that single decision ended up changing everything for him completely. Aristotle Onassis looked at the same situation, but instead of accepting it, he started asking completely different questions. He didn't just absorb the facts. He analyzed them deeply, broke them apart, and searched for what everyone else ignored. And here's the bold move. While everyone was panic selling ships, he was quietly buying everything they feared to hold. People thought he was irrational, reckless, and completely disconnected from what they believed was reality at the time. But in reality, he was simply thinking in a way they were never taught or trained to think for themselves. And this is where it becomes powerful. Just a few years later, everything suddenly flipped in his favor. Trade resumed, demand exploded, and ships became incredibly valuable again, almost faster than anyone could have expected. The same assets people once believed were useless turned into massive wealth almost overnight for those who held them. And Onassis? He became one of the richest men in the world because of that one decision alone. Not because he had secret information, but because he refused to think the same way everyone else was thinking. He didn't accept opinions as facts, and that alone gave him an advantage most people never even realize exists. Now ask yourself honestly, how many opportunities have you ignored simply because you chose to follow the crowd? How many ideas did you reject just because they didn't match what you were originally taught to believe growing up? And how many times did you stop questioning something because it simply felt like an obvious and accepted truth? This is the real cost of learning what to think instead of actually learning how to think for yourself. It limits your perspective, narrows your vision, and quietly controls the direction of your decisions over time. You stop exploring possibilities and start building a life inside boundaries that you never consciously chose to create. But here's where the shift happens. Once you learn how to think, everything begins to open up differently for you. You start connecting ideas others completely miss and seeing patterns that most people overlook without realizing it. You question assumptions, explore deeper ideas, and become comfortable with uncertainty instead of constantly avoiding it. And this is where real growth actually happens. Not in answers, but in the way you search for them. Because thinking isn't about memorizing conclusions. It's about learning how to arrive at them entirely on your own. And that skill changes everything, from the decisions you make to the entire direction your life begins taking. So how do you actually learn how to think? It begins with something simple, but extremely powerful over time. You start by observing more, not just what happens, but why it happens and what it truly means beneath the surface. You begin asking better questions instead of rushing to accept the easiest and most comfortable answers available. Then you connect ideas, even the ones that seem completely unrelated at first glance or initial understanding. Because real innovation often comes from combining things that most people never even think to connect together. You read, explore, and expose yourself to different perspectives instead of staying inside one fixed belief system. And most importantly, you stop blindly trusting everything that everyone else confidently calls facts. You investigate, verify, and build your own understanding instead of borrowing someone else's version of reality. Because the truth is, most facts are just opinions repeated enough times until they begin feeling real to you. And once you truly realize that, you stop being controlled by them without even noticing it happening anymore. You stop following the crowd blindly, and you finally start thinking independently for the first time in your life. And that's when your thoughts stop limiting you and start working for you instead of quietly holding you back. Because in the end, your life doesn't change when your actions change only on the surface level. It changes when your thinking changes, because everything you do begins there, long before it becomes real. Because the system doesn't break you, it quietly teaches you to think in a way that keeps you small,